I'm bored. Let's read a book. Oh! Over the next few 8 days, my cash flow improved, and I stopped going to the market, instead displaying my products on the stage in Destrin's window. With winter full upon Vennard, mostly demonstrated with howling winds and occasional light snows, being able to sell without either paying the market fee or shivering on the cold stones of the square was a definite improvement. The first chair bought 3 silvers, although I ended up having to buy a finish varnish for it and putting a satin sanded gloss on it. Destrin humphed and moaned, but gave in when I insisted that his cut came after deducting the expenses for materials, since I was the one buying them. Duder still watched occasionally as I worked, and Brettel still let me have small scraps free. Even the larger melons cost but a few coppers. Gerlach liked every opportunity to leave the confined stall, and that was another problem. Stalls had to be cleaned, something I had forgotten. Cleaning the sawdust and scraps from the shop with the fragrance of cut wood was almost a pleasure compared to wielding a shovel and a slop bucket. Sometimes I even had to wash parts of the planking, and my hands turned red from freezing water and coarse soap. But something inside me wouldn't let me keep either the stall or shop spotless. As I walked more with the tools, and Dorman had left tools every bit as good as Uncle Sardet's, my hands became nearly an extension of my thoughts, and I could almost feel how the grains and strengths in the lesions in the woods flowed together. Sometimes it wasn't even boring, and I could begin to understand how and why Uncle Sardet looked at wood. "What are you?" demanded Destrin as I stepped back from the parlor chair I had gotten a commission for. It wasn't perfect, not to Uncle Sardet's standards, but even he would have called it a good piece. I had deepened and widened the seat grooves, knowing who would use it, and the spools and braces were a shade heavier to bear the extra weight, yet the proportions did not show that extra strength. He reached out a hand to steady himself, and his face paled. I leaned toward him. "Are you all right?" "Be all right in just an instant." He wasn't. Even when he straightened up and stopped coughing, he was pale. For the first time I had come to Vennard, I reached out with my feelings beyond the woodworking to touch Destrin. He nearly recoiled from the impact. The threads of order within his body were faded, dying a fraction of a span at a time. Yet there was no chaos, no tinge of evil, just as though he were far older than he was, as if he were ancient. Almost without thinking, I lent him some internal order, a touch of strength. "Who are you?" he repeated, as though his coughing attack had never occurred, but he edged closer to the hearth. I wiped my forehead. "I'm Laris." Destrin shook his head. "A master trained you, Laris. I'm a poor excuse for a crafter, and I know it, but I can recognize quality and skill. Sometimes you look like Dorman when you touch the wood, or just let the plane graze an edge. You're in a different world. When you look at a piece of wood, you look like you see all the way through it." I did, but there wasn't any reason to tell Destrin that. So I shrugged. I was shrugging a lot in Vennard. "Like you, Destrin, I'm just trying to make a living." He waved me away. This time, with what I had given him, he recovered quickly. "Darn chill," he mumbled. Then his eyes met mine, and as if he recognized what I was, he shook his head. What will I do when you leave?" I looked back at the chair. Destrin had raised the real question. "You had this shop before I came," I said firmly, but it was no answer, and we both knew it. Outside, the wind whistled, shaking the front shutters and rattling the display window. "Are you ready for supper, Papa?" Dear stood by the stairs, looking as petite and fragile as always, as if a good breeze would carry her away. Yet there was an iron behind that seeming fragility. As I had discovered watching her negotiate with a merchant's wife over some curtains she had provided. "Good time to stop," agreed the crafter. With Dear served a barley soup. It was a hearty soup. The biscuits were fresh, young or fragile looking. She could cook, and she always had a pleasant if shy smile. That night, with my back against the brick wall and my feet up on the pallet that served as a couch, bed, and study area, I eased out the bases of order. The cover was getting battered, perhaps because I had read through the slim volume at least twice. Reading didn't mean understanding, unfortunately. Some things were easy enough, like the business with the sheep had been, or like helping strengthen Destron's body to fight the wasting disease. I could understand what disease did to Destron, but there was nothing I could do. Though Destron looked better after my intervention, and I would do what I could, but slowly, he was dying. Even the darned introduction to the book didn't help. Learning without understanding can but increase frustration of the impatient. Or how about, all things are not possible even to the greatest? Wonderful, just wonderful. I closed the book and looked at nothing. Too many questions kept nagging at me, even as I continued to force my way through the darnable bases of order. At times I would sit there under the lamp, later than I should have been up, knowing that my eyes would burn the next day. Struggling with the conflicts and ambiguities. I couldn't read the book from front to back. That I had given up early, so I read the book sections to section. The ones on the mechanics of order, and I tried some of them out, like aligning metals to strengthen them or change their characteristics. Those were easy, at least on nails or scraps, after a little practice. And using a pot of water and a candle as a burner, I could figure out how the weather modifications worked, sort of. What scared me there were all the qualifications and warnings about large storms, changing harvests later in the year, and creating droughts elsewhere. But the pot of water and the burner weren't going to change anything except make the air in the shop a little damper, and that didn't hurt the wood at all. So I sat there, back against the wall, feet up on my pallet, trying to make sense of what I had just learned, or thought I had learned, and realizing that some of the things were not possible. Even for the Order Master, I wasn't. A glimmer of yellow from the shadows caught my eye. Whist! A whisper of slipped feet followed. Dear stood back from the curtains to my alcove. How long she had been there, I didn't know, but her dark eyes flickered from me to the book and back. In my shorts and nothing else, I felt undressed. "You can come in, Dear." She did, but not far, only just inside the curtain that served as a doorway to my alcove. She wore an old maroon woolen robe over a worn white shift, and her shoulder-length hair was tied back. "Laris?" "Yes." I turned and swung my feet off the bed, setting them on the floor and sitting sideways on my pallet bed. "Were you once a priest?" Her voice was soft, as it always was, not timid, but soft. I did not answer her, and she said nothing, finally sitting on the edge of the pallet, the faintest scent of roses reaching me. You couldn't sleep. She shook her head. I worry about Papa. So do I. I know. She edged herself towards me. He sees it too. He won't say anything. She reached out a slender hand and laid it on my forearm. Her fingers were firm and cool against my skin, and I swallowed. Laris, she eased even closer. I tried not to shiver. Please stay, whatever you want. Even though she had moved almost beside me, deep within she was shivering. Yet at the same time she was calmly purposeful. I removed her hand. Dear, I will do whatever I can for your father. She edged back, just enough to let me know she was grateful. Thank you, that was all she said, but she meant it. And that was enough. She sat there for a time. Finally she asked, Where are you from? A place far away, so far that I might not be able to return. She looked at me and I looked back. And she opened her mouth and closed it before asking another question. Why are you here? You'd have to say that it's a pilgrimage of sorts. Time for me to learn and to decide. Have you learned things you didn't know? She wrapped the robe around herself more tightly, reminding me that the shop was chill. Winter still had Fenard. The cold didn't bother me as much as it once had. But that was because I had begun to look at my own internal order, perhaps. Some days, I admitted, I never seemed to learn what I thought I was going to learn, though. She nodded at me to continue. I left woodworking once, when I was an apprentice, and I wasn't sure I'd ever do it again. It seemed, well, boring. Why would anybody want to care about the grains lined up just right, or whether there was too much pressure on the clamps? You seem to like it now. Some days I stand and watch you, and you don't even see me, even when I'm almost beside you. You'd better go. A faint smile crossed her face as she rose, almost a grin, but touched with a little sadness I could feel without reaching. Thank you. She was gone too soon, and almost too late, and I wondered what harm it would have done to have taken what she had offered. But the words of my father and Tullerin in the book hammered at me, and I knew it was what was best. But I woke knowing what I had to do. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on any of my videos. See y'all in the next one. Goodbye!